Welcome, everybody, to the first ever episode of the Max Rounds 30 podcast, where there is no overtime. I am joined today by Coy from M2 Esports, as well as M&Ms from Dust2 US, and I myself am the student esports director at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Welcome, everybody, today to our brand new show about everything ESEA Premier in North America, and we'll be covering it all in 30 minutes.
All right, we are here on the eve of the start of Week 3 of ESEA Premier Season 36. And I think before we can get into any other topics this season, we have to talk about the absolute dumpster fire that is Depth Esports. So for those of you who don't know, today, midday today, there was a thread posted by Sin regarding racist posts by members of Depth Esports. And this snowballed completely out of control as every Twitter pundit, player, and MDO loungeabout came into the scene and wanted to give their hot takes on Depth Esports being racist in the scene, including none other than Team Liquid's Elige. This results in Depth Esports dropping their team and the team potentially facing further punitive action, including being dropped from FPL. Can I get some takes from you guys regarding should we be surprised that this happened to Depth Esports?
Honestly, not really. Over the past, few seasons, it's been a well-known thing and well-documented thing through social media and stuff that they have been acting like this publicly with no shame whatsoever. So it kind of seemed almost destined, but the backlash that we saw today was definitely something that took me by surprise, at least. I wasn't expecting it to scale as large as it did.
Yeah, I gotta just adding to that. I can't believe that it had to become such a dumpster fire on Twitter and just have this stuff exposed to the general public for anybody to actually do anything about this. I mean, there was talks on, I don't remember if it was, I think it was on Twitter. There was a Twitter thread about it. But there was talks about apparently in the, I don't know if it was FPLC or FPL, but I believe they were talking about how apparently members from that depth squad were posting child porn into the match chat, as well as and other things like that. And it was just it was such a dumpster fire.
To clarify the child porn charge, it has been alleged that was alleged. It has been alleged that their account was hacked, but their account hasn't been hacked for months and months. So everything else you see from the paste bin that Elige posted, the rampant use of the N-word, the disparaging comments, the outright racism, everything else, there's really no excuse for that. Do you guys think FACEIT dropped the ball when it comes to that by not banning them until today?
I think when it comes to things like FACEIT, the way that FPL operates, it's very club-like to a certain extent, right? And so there's not a lot of external moderation of the individuals in that group. So it becomes a little bit, of a gray area whether or not people are banned for content that's being posted and distributed within that group,
Yeah, it was I heard somebody was having a conversation, there was another Twitter thread that was going on where people were saying that what was it? They were saying that that the response from FACEIT was to just figure out how to turn off people posting images in match chats, which
that seems like a
band-aid. Band-aid, ignoring the problem, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
That's not. Corey, I'm sure is someone who interacts with players on the precipice of advanced Premier frequently, that the issues with Depth Esports is a team with Snav, Flush, Havoc, all those guys. That's no secret. That's not some shocking revelation today that they're posting racist and offensive stuff all over the internet. That's just who they are as players. They've been banned multiple times. They've been dropped by multiple orgs. And honestly, I see it also as a failure by Depth Esports to research the team before signing them, because they've had them on the books twice now, and the owner's this is a complete surprise. This is not who we are. We were completely blindsided by this. But anyone could tell you.
Absolutely. There's so much documentation out there. Earlier this year, there's a Twitter thread, or earlier in 2020, there's a Twitter thread about it. There's been well-known, documented, public allegations of this stuff happening with proof. And so the fact that it didn't quite reach Depth like administration, like their owners and stuff like that, is a little surprising to me. I definitely would have liked to see a little bit more research done into the squad that they not only like brought in once but twice now.
Yeah, having that just like it's been repeated offense after repeated offense with these guys, and it's just they're coming into people's Twitter replies, like they're replying out here to Trill, being like, because like even there was a ban evasion thing aspect to this as well. Where was it? I don't remember who was it.
Trill is alleging Trill's whole premise is that Eptima's banned for a year because of racist comments on ESEA, and his whole premise is that because they're streaming the match to Eptima and then he just talks to them through Discord, that he's coaching them without being a coach, and so that's ban evasion. And honestly, I agree with him. Like, you can't coach a team through Discord and say you're not coaching them.
Well, yeah, especially if they're streaming the game to you, like
live too.
Like, if anyone thinks Flush is the real coach of Depth, like, I'm sorry, like, it's Eptima. And I think to close out this section, because we are hitting up our time limit for this topic, do you guys think there's a future for Depth in ESEA? Because one thing I touched on today was that they seem to have a hard-on for saying the N-word to JoJo, who is a member of the Mythic lineup. And can ESEA really accept that there's a whole team of people saying offensive things to another player? Like, what do you think?
Literally no. So like, while you could
No.
make an argument they're going to be like sticking around in MDL maybe, that's exclusively just until there are teams that can outright beat them, because there's no way that they're going to be getting signed to at least a knowledgeable org. And with both Simple and Elige commenting on the topic, like, there's a very good chance that they're going to be just outright
It's done
publicly
for
canceled.
them until they give a mea culpa 2 months from now, and then 6 months later another org will sign them, and I'm sure they'll be back to their old ways. But for now, I think it's done for them.
So here's the real question, though: does ESEA step in and ban them for violating their conduct rules? I mean, this is the big thing. What was it? You brought it up, Jeff, in a tweet where you brought up the unsportsmanlike conduct rule section, and it makes complete sense that they really should receive some sort of ban for this, because this isn't something that should be allowed in the community.
I feel like ESEA hasn't flexed its muscles ever for unsportsmanlike conduct, and as the scene struggles to become more professional, I think this is the perfect sacrificial lamb. Is you just take Depth out to the pasture, you put Lassie down, and you say, guys, obviously you can't say the N-word to other people on different teams. If you do this again, we will just disqualify your team. Like, it shouldn't need to be said that you can't just be going around saying the N-word to other players and saying other stuff like, oh, your family hates you so much, that's why you live in a team house. Like, that's not tenable.
Yeah, I will also point out really fast before we wrap this topic up, I really did enjoy JoJo's tweet where he posted a picture of his, was it an Emperor M4A4 with the name tag M4 space civil rights. And excited for my match tomorrow versus at Depth Esports.
Do we think they're playing? Last thoughts. Yes or no question. Are they playing tomorrow, you think?
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to play the game. They're not going to be Depth, but they're going to be playing the game.
I think so too, because as much as I want ESA to sanction them in some way, I just don't think they're nimble enough to, like, this is going to be a 40-hour turnaround before I'm sure they have any comment on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, even Face it took a solid, what was it, like 4 or 5 hours to kind of figure out.
After every person high and low in the scene was spamming A Miracle's Twitter saying, hey, do your job. Yeah.
And ESEA, to my knowledge, is just even more like bureaucratic than the FPL scene is too.
Yeah. So moving on to our next topic, I know this is something you're particularly interested in discussing, Koi, is that it's about JoJo, so it's perfect. Yeah. Is Mythic have brought on JoJo and Daff as replacements for Katie and Poland, and I know you had something you wanted to discuss regarding what you think the team's going to be looking like this season. So do you think you can discuss that?
So I don't think that there's any way in hell that we can predict the same kind of results from Mythic like they had last season yet. And the real reason for that is, number one, they brought in JoJo, not even opping. He's like in their more like entry rifle sort of role, and they brought in Daff, who's kind of, it seems, filling a more secondary rifle as well. And that move, in my opinion, has like kind of taken a bit of the wind from the sails of Mythic, because a lot of what they won off of was Katie making space and things like that. So it'll be really interesting to see how their matches, like I think it's like tomorrow or in the next few days, when they take on Depth. It'll be really interesting to see how that sort of now more passive Mythic is going to be taking on, the really puggy, overtly racist Depth.
Yeah, and I think that Katie, the loss of Katie to most likely Valorant is probably gonna be one of those another heavy blows we're gonna have to accept, especially in terms of new star talent. Is I think she really brought the X factor to Mythic. Like her and Flom are the two players I think you had to rely on old Mythic to win the 2v4s, get them out of bad situations. Because while Adren and Davey have the skills and the experience that hang in MDL, I don't think you can really count on them as much for just the raw mechanical get the kills, win the round. And so I don't think Mythic will get relegated this season, but I don't see them. I think it's going to be a long shot for playoffs for them.
I think they definitely have a chance to make playoffs. And that's exclusively because with the combined experience of Adren, Davey, and Flom, I definitely think that JoJo and Daff can build into a team that's reputable, right? I think they can fill those roles eventually. But until then, we're gonna have to see a complete a style swap from Mythic, right? They're no longer going to be able to be a very explosive, very aggressive team like they were in the past. They're going to have to start relying more on their hard strats and just general outreads of the opponent.
Now, the one question I've brought up, because I don't know a whole lot about this particular roster move, is Daff intended to be a full-time? Is that their confirmed rest of season fifth?
As far as I'm aware, that's their 5-man lineup for us this season. Obviously, with Mythic, you really never know because, for example, last season you had ZNF kind of coming and going as he was able to. But I think the whole reason they chose young players like JoJo and Daff is so that they have players who are available and who can play the whole season because. And to be honest, players who aren't, people aren't breaking down the doors to sign to Valorant teams right now is so that they don't have to deal with roster changes midway through the season.
I think another big thing that people kind of underrate about Mythic is that really while they are driven to win, they're not driven to win this season right now, right? They are very willing to work with new players and build a lineup, not just win games, which I think is super underrated, and that's why I will always respect their willingness to prefer team chemistry and team development over just raw fight power,
Yeah, so I think kind of with that too, it's Mythic was originally, is that stream team kind of roster, and it's interesting to watch it kind of form into an NA young talent farm. And I think that's it's kind of cool if that's really the concept that they're trying to kind of aim for and kind of move away from the everybody's a streamer thing, but most of them stream kind of thing. I think that's some good value.
I almost feel like that's accidental more than intentional. I know
Right.
Flom said around the RMR, when the RMR was still going in 2020, that he was almost disappointed and shocked to see Mythic as one of the teams that were getting invites to RMR events because there's so little, there's so few active teams that can really hang at the top of MDL. They invite Flom streamers as sort of a concession. And, I've always pictured them as the gatekeepers of MDL, is that if you can't beat Mythic, you don't deserve to win MDL. Or rather Premier now. And so, that's kind of what I expect from them is they beat all the new teams while you have your High Coast and your Triumph and your Bad News Bears, and they should be taking walks against them. They should be taking them for walks to the park.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You have to beat the old guard if you want to make it to Pro League.
Yeah, if you want to win the season, you have to beat Adren, you have to beat Davey, and you have to beat Flom. If you're a young gun, you can't lose to the old guard at this point.
Wait, you're gonna have to pardon me for being way too new to this, but has Mythic actually ever won?
No, they got second
I
place
didn't
in
think so.
season 34 or season 33. They lost the Chaos in the finals, and that was seen as like an
Yeah.
indictment of MDL at the time that the stream team came in second because
Kind of is
I mean
though.
they played well and like they had good players back then, but it was like it was like Mythic shouldn't be getting second place in any premier that's functioning correctly and nurturing like new talent.
I
So
think it's
speaking of, so I think it's about time to head on to our next topic.
okay.
Speaking of new talent and the gatekeepers of MDL, what do you guys think about the implosion of Levitate? For those who don't know, Levitate recently underwent a colossal roster change where in a one fell swoop, uh, Wilkie, Johan, and Rin left, as well as their coach Vu, who says he's not probably interested in coaching premier level talent again. Koi, I know you're someone who is hyping up that roster, so how do you feel about them just completely imploding?
I was, yeah, because like on paper, in my opinion, that team it had the building blocks to succeed, right? If something could put them together and develop, a strong, strat book, have good reads, that kind of stuff, like there was enough individual firepower and enough like there was no one like really with like a hard ego on that team either, right? So like that could build into the next like NA Young Gun team. But unfortunately, with the implosion, we're left with uh, like sort of like a husk of a team. It feels, and most of that was due. Like I watched some of their matches; they were very flat. It felt like there wasn't a lot of set, coordinated play. A lot of just individual duels being lost across the map. So it was very disappointing, I guess, to see that team not build structurally and build more for the individual. Um, and so I think that it was just almost like a turn for the worse, if I may. I definitely think they could have built into something better, but instead
Are
they
you
just let
happy
go.
to see Rin and Johan jump to SKDC, or is that a waste of time for you?
I personally have never actually like been that invested in the development of SKDC. I think Rin is going to be one of the more underrated upcoming players, though. I definitely think Rin is a player to keep an eye out on. Whether he drops down to to upper advanced or he continues in MDL, I think he's got the fundamentals to be a fantastic both IGL secondary caller and just general rifler. Johan, I'm less sold on, but I mean, it's not like he really had a chance to prove himself. So it'll be interesting to see how his games with SKDC go.
Speaking of implosions in the Premier Division, um, what do you guys think about the seeming untimely depth of Imperium? Obviously, this week they benched Seziwana and Rise under the pretense of wanting more firepower. What do you think about that, Jacob?
If I'm going to be honest, that's the one team that I haven't kept a major eye
I
on.
don't think you need to. I'm gonna be real. That's a team with Valens. It was Valens, Seziwana, Rise, Valens, Sezidaba, and I'm struggling to remember
J
the last.
Dubs. J
J
Dubs
Dub
was on there.
and Sherps, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one of the, when I wrote. So I recently wrote a cover. I wrote a preview article for MDL for Dusty.us, and I put them at the lowest. I put them at the lowest team in their respective group because I don't really see a whole lot going right for that roster. While some of their players are okay, like I definitely would say Seziwana and Rise have the potential to have strong performances. They're highly inconsistent, and I feel like Valens is just a black hole on that roster because people at a professional level talk down about players like Hunden and Crystal and Pronax, etc., for not being able to frag. But Valens over here is getting like 0.6s in NA Premier, and I just don't think that works. So going back to Seziwana and Rise, what do you guys think about them being cut under the pretense of needing more firepower?
So when it comes to the Rise and Seziwana thing, I think it was I think it was a clash of roles. I think individually they're good, but they're not what the team needed. Rise functions really well as like a more supportive rifler and secondary op, but on that team, like he was like the primary, right? Like that's what he was supposed to do. and he just doesn't have that consistency nor that ability to really, go out there and find that kill no matter what's stopping him, right? And so without that ability, most oppers, especially in the MDL level, are going to kind of fall flat, right? As for Seziwana, I'm not super sure as to how he was performing like individually and like how he worked with the team. It could have been a chemistry thing. It could have just been, too many support players kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see who have they brought in to like replace them. Do we know
Right
yet?
now, they've officially announced a 2-week trial for Atomic and Wilkie.
Oh, okay. So
What do you
they
think about that?
so Wilkie is one of, like, personally, I think that Wilkie is also going to be one of those more up and coming underrated players. I think that he also has the fundamentals to really succeed at a higher level as he gains experience. It'll be interesting to see how Atomic coming in will change the dynamic of the team, though. But I have hopes. I think that team will ultimately perform better than a Rise Seziwana lineup, but I still don't know if that's enough to get them, over the hurdle that
Do you think
is the NAMDL
do
scene.
you think they can keep using Valens? Like, I don't think he's cuttable, but let's say you were the coach or the manager of that roster, would you keep? Is his skill as an IGL a liability? Is it enough to offset the liability of not being able to play? What do you guys think?
If Wilkie and who's the second, and Atomic, if Wilkie and Atomic can succeed really well, I think Valens is fine. If Valens is having actual, like, truly momentous in-game calling, if he's able to read a lot of what MDL is doing, which, to be fair, MDL is pretty readable, he should be fine. Like, you can drop 0.6s if the rest of your team is fragging. You can make those important mid-round calls if your team can execute on them. But if he's not able to build structurally, then he does just become a liability.
Jacob, whenever we mention Valens, you seem to sort of twist and whinge a little bit. Do you have thoughts on his role within the team? Like, does he do anything for you?
It's just like, it's like the kind of old blood kind of thing where it's like, are they still really bringing, despite everything, are they still bringing value to the game? Is kind of like that feeling. It's like, they have to kind of come back, and he's got to come back and prove, that he can play at this level and lead at this level. And it's like, sometimes you just lose that, and I guess it's like, this will be the clip that, everybody comes back to be like, oh, look at that, he doubted Valens, man. Look at this.
I don't think you need to worry about Valens.
I don't think I have to worry
putting
about
in
it
the
either.
reps at the gym and then putting up like 1.25 rating for the rest of the season.
Right.
For me, I don't know if he has to prove to me, I think, that he has an IGL strat book that isn't 3 years old at this point. Because when you think about his career, the last time he was really known as a tier 1 coach was in 2018. And with that, he's not just old guard. Like, he's old guard. Like, most players weren't old enough to play in Premier when he was last playing Premier. And I honestly I love him as a coach. I love him as an IGL, but I kind of see him as like a tourist at this point because he can get onto any team he wants and just hang. Like, he's been playing with Mexican teams last year and going down there and having similar performances. But I think, like, he won a major, so if people are willing to accept him on your team, like, more power to you. Have fun have fun being your data scientist who occasionally comes on the server. But I don't think any serious team could look at him and be like, that's a player we want on our team right now.
I think the one reason why Valens is actually kind of like a hot commodity in MDL right now is because there is such a lack of, like, proven IGLs, right? Like, no one, like, in ESEA, a lot of times players are picked up because of their, like, raw fragging power or their statistics or something like that, right? Or they fit a role in the team, like an op or something, right?
All right, I think we have 6 minutes left, so let's
Okay.
thumbs up or thumbs down for the new Imperium roster.
Yeah.
New Imperium roster, yes, but Imperium overall, yeah.
Relegation City.
So,
all right.
I've got one thing that we can roll up to, and hopefully have maybe a little bit of time left to address one more thing. But I kind of want to know all of your thoughts on. I mean, were you able to catch? I mean, Third Impact had probably the most tumultuous season possible last time around. 6-10, they avoided relegation. They had the whole thing with Koala Noob, and they're just kind of like trying to figure out what they can do without messing with roster limits and stuff. Seeing them come out and take down Recon 5 in a 2-0 fashion, albeit pretty close. I mean, both games were 16-14. Where do you think Third Impact actually has a shot to be a fighting force in their conference? And do you think that Recon 5, do you think this is like an early season powerhouse matchup? Or I kind of want to know some thoughts.
I don't think it's a powerhouse matchup, and I'm happy for Third Impact to win that match. I think that'll help them potentially finish towards the top of the group. But I don't see them going into playoffs. And for Recon 5, I see it more as a ring rust issue, because you have players like CJ who don't play frequently. You just had T Weiss rejoin the roster, and he hasn't played in a hot minute. And so you have such firepower with players like Cynic on there. I feel like if they had more time to prepare, or if they just weren't straight pugging, they probably would have taken it much more comfortably. But at the same time, I'm not I can't hate. I can't say like the Third Impact roster is like a waste. Like, I'm actually really excited for it. Like, I think I like every player on this roster personally, but I think it's one of those teams that just needs more time in the oven.
Absolutely. So, in my opinion, I view Recon 5 very similarly to Mythic, just in a different way, right? So on one hand, you have the stream team. On the other hand, you kind of have like the pug team, right? But they're all the very veteran puggers. They're very experienced together. They know how to work a map properly, even if it's in like a puggy, more individual way. And so, in my opinion, I would consider this to be maybe not like the match of the MDL season, but definitely an overall higher quality match than we're going to see a lot of the time, I feel. Third Impact, in my opinion, has the ability to make playoffs 100%. I think their only weakness is, and now I'm not familiar with like the team dynamics or anything, but their only weakness is potentially their experience level, like individually. I think that in high stress, high intensity situations, I'm not sure how good their mental is going to be necessarily, but I definitely think there are building blocks to success there, and they are going to be developing into a true powerhouse team that can take down teams way better than Recon 5.
Yeah, I agree with that, honestly. I think that we're kind of running out of time here. We're at about 2 minutes, 30 seconds left. So, Jeff, I believe you had a few more things you wanted to cover?
I just wrap things up real quickly. We're heading into week 3. Let's go with your match to watch and match to miss. So for me, I think the match this week to watch is, there's not really many to choose from, but I think the match to watch is Secret Cup versus Triumph. Secret Cup right now and Triumph are in a dead heat, and it's two rosters totally full of skill that are basically new, and I think it's going to be a 3-map blazer of a match. And I think the match to miss this week is Extra Salt versus Watch This. Unless you want to watch Extra Salt just wail on a team, I don't think it's worth your time.
Absolutely agree. I think it'll be really interesting to see how Triumph has improved over the past few weeks, seeing as though they have had like 2 like close losses to Secret Club in both DreamHack Open and one of the most recent ESEA Cash Cups. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of new things they're bringing to the table, game plan wise, and who's hitting shots really.
Jacob?
This one's a little tough. Personally, I'm kind of like, I think the real test here, and this is gonna be kind of dumb, but I think that we're gonna get a kind of good match out of SKDC versus GGPR. So the reason being that SKDC, they've been switching some things around, and GGPR is coming back, and they're trying to, reprove themselves after, whatever the heck was going on with their roster over the past 2 weeks. So, GGPR was able to prove themselves over Rise, and they were able to actually come back with a pretty good victory. And, they had that carry from Arcus. And you know, I just think it'll be kind of interesting to see, you know, if SKDC can kind of pull themselves out of the gutter and, you know,
Yeah, definitely a
slam out
fun
win.
definitely a fun like lower ranked match. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're looking for something that, you know, it's like, you know, bottom half of Premier, but if you're looking for something like that, I think that's personally my match that I'd like to watch out for. I might cast it, who knows? We'll see. So here we are. We got 20 seconds left. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Don't say the N word if you're an aspiring MDL player.
This is true.
Yeah, racism is not cool.
Racism is bad. Don't do it.
All right, everybody. Well, here we are. 5 seconds left. Thank you, everybody, for, I guess, this time around loading up YouTube. We might be doing this in a live show setup in the future, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll probably link it like all over the place on the Twitter, which we'll probably all be sharing all over our Twitter. So just like look at Twitter and you'll probably find it. So thank you all for watching, and have a great night or evening or morning, depending on when you're watching this. Peace out.